tasks as people. And, you know, give them the right to think and directing and all that stuff. But we don't give those rights to chimpanzees. Anyway, that's when we talk about that. That's kind of where I'm coming from, this idea of what do we mean by person, basically. So, I don't know if you guys have.
Well, I would say that, you know, I've stared into the eyes of many animals over my career, when, you know, fantasy or people's pets or whatever. The only time I thought there was a mind like mine looking back at me was when I looked at Chimpanzee in West Midlands Safari Park. I mean, it was sort of, there was mutual, it wasn't just like you look at a cat, the cat looks back at you, you're both recognising each other is staring at you. It was, yeah, there's a person like me inside that skull looking at me, the way that and I don't know whether that's because the way the facial features and, you know, little twitches around the eyes and so on were just triggering the kind of things you see when I'm human. But I know that chimps are smart, but I've never looked at a horse or a dog or a goldfish or anything and felt that same sort of, holy shit, that's a person. You know, so that's for me. There's the caveat that I have stared into the eyes of many octopuses and gutfish and so on. And there may be a person behind there, but they're just so alien in terms of form that, you know, I couldn't tell if the octopus in question was gazing at me intently, thinking quadratic equations, or asleep. You know, because, you know, it's not like they, you know, closing the dip of eyelids like me. So there's that, and then, yeah, well, I'm definitely with you on the, we should be calling all sorts of things from all sorts of physicists, and the role of human, because...
Well, about human, I think that you could draw a distinction between human and person. You can talk about personhood.
Yes,
you can grant something personhood without saying it's human.
But it's things like the Neanderthals, modern Homo sapiens, met them, they shagged. Europeans are the descendants of both. You know, and like the people that migrated across Asia and eventually become Australian Aborigines, they met the Denisovans, I can't remember. It's like the Neanderthals but a different region. They shagged the modern kind of, you know, Australian Aborigines and Asian peoples are a descendant of both.
I might say we only really know they exist because they're in the DNA of modern human beings.
Yes, and they find a few finger bones and things. Yeah, so yeah, I shall stop wittering now. Martin,
that's okay. I wanted to bring along my little mates here, who ironically is cuddling book Heads, which I was reading randomly on the train, and that was all about consciousness and heads and things like that, and that kind of phase. But I need to backtrack a bit. Essentially, little reminder of why I'm here, should we say? But yeah, I'd say with animals, say the word animal. If you think, oh, like an asset, things like that. But there are some wonderful dogs I have got to know, and it's that reaction. It's the reaction and memory, or how they react and see. There are experiences there, and also you've got all these different types of personalities. Same with horses, absolutely with horses. Again, all got different personalities, and it goes with both as well. So you've got certain animals who will do problem solving. So there's an example I absolutely love about how it's sheep, how they escaped from their field. And what they worked out was there was a cattle grid, so they tuck their legs up and roll over. So there was that kind of thought process clearly going on there.
You must be learning.
Yeah,
maybe one of them picked it out and the others copied.
Exactly, that's his watch.
Sheep,
They have a
sorry, any personal senses there? Sorry,
They have a reputation. It's a general reputation, but it's like as well. There are examples of birds who have paid for things using leaves of some kind of currency, and then they get rewarded. So again, you've got that learned behaviour. Crows as well. They definitely have their own kind of traits, and there's intelligence there. I think it's how we think about intelligence. So they might not write, they might not read, but you can be sure, put them in an environment where there are no houses, things like that. There aren't any buses or tubes or office buildings, but essentially who's going to do the better job of survival with absolutely no resources? And I think essentially it would be the species that we term animals, because it's not so much they're subhuman, they're different. They have a different way of living. They're engineered differently. So you've got the paws, you've got the claws, and the ears, the way that they forage, the way that they find things they can eat, things they can't eat. Ways to, you've got animals who drop coconuts so they can get the juice out as well. So essentially they've adapted to their environment. So they're more functional. I'd say that human beings are more, they deal with things like financial services and all that stuff. So that's why I think animals are better, because essentially you don't see them reaping in bankers' bonuses, but they're just different in the way they operate and how they're physically constructed. But there are still the personalities, the families. There's the nurturing their young. There are all these different types of themes that, while they don't look like us, they have ways that they act on those specific themes that are part of it, they're a part of life, they're part of evolution, and a part of how we step forward and everything.
I'd like to add that what you've been criticising and we're going to talk, it's very Western cultural bias. There are cultures where animals are our little brothers and sisters.
Yes.
Yeah. There's many religions and things where they're not lesser. It's okay to eat them, say, but you've got to say thank you for, doing it. Or you've got, sacred animals and so on that have got personhood. And if you kill one of the sacred monkeys, you will get the force of the law on you, kind of thing.
I think we do underappreciate animal intelligence. And what I mean by that is, if you say you imagine this was a scale of the complexity of human tools and the complexity measured by how much you needed to understand the universe in order to understand that tool. And if, say, that was a flip hand axe, and that was a modern sort of Windows whatever laptop, and if I said, where on that scale do you put a Sinclair ZX81, the answer is there. Because it's like, micrometer away. But we talk about the ZX81s, but incredibly primitive, like 1K of RAM. So we've got like a kind of almost a logarithmic scale we intuitively use. And again, if you look at intelligence, where you define intelligence as the ability to observe the world, sense it, process what that means, compare it with your learned memories and your memory database, and then extrapolate what that might mean, even though it's something you've never actually quite seen before, and then make decisions. And if we say that is a tree, and that is a human being, where on that do you put a dog? Well, the answer is there, if you saw me. But I think we intrinsically use a logarithmic scale. The other I would just say, it's not really relevant, but of all the people in my life, the only person who's always, without fail, overjoyed to see me is my ex-wife's dog. So I am a dog person. But moving on, I was thinking, so we have this thing where we happen to have a big gap between it. So we have one human species coming around to come see. This week, you have to be very careful. So I'll make this point. Homo sapiens is a very inbred species compared to other species. We're all pretty much exactly the same. Anyone who tries to think that races are a biological thing, races are social constructs, albeit one based on certain biological factors. Anyone who tries to make out there's any kind of difference between different geographical areas of human beings is idiot, racist, bigot, moron, the lot. But equally, if I say that human beings as a species are more intelligent, or Homo sapiens as a species is more intelligent than chimpanzees, I don't think that's a speciesist statement. I think if I say that gives human beings more worth than chimpanzees, that might be a species statement. But it's not species to say they have more intelligence. And so, with one exception, I think it's the Packlids, which was kind of done for humour, it's very noticeable that in fantasy and science fiction, because we don't want to pander to racists, we tend to make it that all intelligent species are the same level. there's one tier of intelligent species, and then below that there's animals.
And there's the glowing energy beings that
Possibly, yeah. We're okay, people more intelligent, the intelligent energy beings. But, if you had if you have a science fiction world, and you go and you find a world out there that's like an Earth-like world, it's not going to be a universe where they conveniently either have intelligent people like us, and we can learn their language, or teach them ours, and we can negotiate them, have diplomacy as equals. Or, brilliant, there's no intelligent life forms here, so we can colonise the world, albeit obviously respecting the environment. There is no reason why we can't get there and find someone, well, like Homo habilis. And then the question is, well, we can't quite treat them as people, because maybe they might have a very crude language, but they might not say understand tense or conditions. They can't say, I will wait here until you do this, and then I will do that. So we can't negotiate diplomatic treaties with them. We can't really learn much of the language, because there isn't much more other than, other one banana. There are no pronouns. They're never going to be able to understand that I am I to me, but you are I is you, sort of. But equally, it'd be unfair to treat them as animals. Or would it be? Again, but it's the whole thing. Why do space chimpanzees get to keep their planet, but Earth chimpanzees, well, screw you, we're going to take the forest.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting, I see why people don't want to explore that in science fiction and fantasy, but it seems like a really weird kind of, it's an arbitrary thing that, I can see why we don't want to go there, I don't think I'd go there, but I find it fascinating as,
I mean, there are examples of it. There's a book called A Different Flesh by Harry Turtledove, which is a collection of short stories, and all set in the same universe, and his premise is, Homo habilis got to the Americas, but Homo sapiens didn't. So that he has wiped the Native Americans from history, which they may be a bit miffed at. But when Columbus and co turn up, instead of meeting Native American tribes, there are Homo habilis, and then basically all the short stories are a series of incidents, real incidents in American history.
Yes.
He has rewritten to include Homo habilis. So there's something like the Lewis and Clark expedition, and there's Homo habilis throwing spears at mammoths in it.
I mean, I suppose given that I'm just sorry, so given that they treated Homo sapiens like animals,
yeah.
I can't imagine.
Yes,
what was the book again?
It's called A Different Flesh by Harry Turtledove. I mean, it was written ages ago, so it may be read.
No, I'm a massive Turtledove fan, but that's one I haven't got.
Yeah, and one of the essays is there was a famous court case which a black man versus the American government say that you shouldn't treat black people as chattel slavery and so on. And in this one, the court case is even more powerful because he can point to Homo habilis and go, but you all think that, I'm smarter than him, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, therefore you should be lumping me with you, not with them.
So that's black people getting...
Yeah.
I think
so it's I haven't read it for I can't find my copy, but I haven't reread it for years. But yeah, that's
there's
one.
A book called Fuzzy Sapiens, I think by H.B. Pike. I haven't read.
Yeah.
There's a book I've read called Borderline. It's years ago I read it, and it's I think 1930s. So it's reprinted like a classic thing. And in this one, they find like a missing link. I mean, I think it's possibly nice that it's both quite opposite in terms of things, but they find a missing link species somewhere like in Indonesia, probably Dutch East Indies there. And then what they do is they actually use, that's a bit sick actually, they use artificial insemination to get a female pregnant with a human, hybrid, and then they kill the baby. So I probably should say trigger words, but sorry. And then they use that to trigger a court case of was it murder, basically, because they want to then prove that they want to give these human rights, basically. And so it is all about this. Suddenly, we have this neat distinction between human beings because they're not human. Well, sorry, they are. I said they are human. They're not Homo sapiens.
Yes.
So, yes. So people have explored it, but that was like nearly 100 years ago. So.
I think what this makes me think of is where I've been, let's just say, getting my confidence, my voice in certain areas that I needed to. The one thing that's come into my head has been, it's just really random this, but the newer versions of Planet of the Apes, the Rise of Planet of the Apes, I just find, even though some of the movies are a bit, I actually find the whole principle of it really interesting, especially where Caesar just goes, no, or one of them certainly goes, no, but it's looking at the what if chimps had the level of intelligence of humans, that they're still doing things in their different ways, they're learning languages, but also they've got more physical strength. So essentially then the humans end up being the downtrodden species. But I just find those themes so interesting. And my partner introduced me to the Tomorrow People, which is another aspect of this, where Homo sapiens are known as saps, I think. But the Tomorrow People they have to make sure they keep their powers hidden because of what people as a group are like in terms of exploitation, which I think is one of the things that just happens. In so many themes, it's humans just taking over everything. And they say that it's diverse, but in this day and age, you've got so much fear of the different and the unknown. I personally love to embrace it, and that's why I speak about diversity and inclusion, because it's just so fascinating, and the differences I find uninspiring. Seeing those different points of view, the different ways of life, everything. But again, people will fear what they don't understand. And I think in terms of something different, it's so easy to have that prejudice because people will go like with like in general. So it's like going with somebody who looks like you. And yeah, it's just, I just find those thoughts so interesting in terms of just how differences are perceived.
I think you've also got the problem that humans and animal species are often in conflict. And sometimes it's a very one-sided conflict. It's the farmer doesn't like the fact that rabbits are eating the grass that he wants his sheep to eat, so he kills the rabbit. But sometimes it's, now this is definitely trigger warning. There is a chimpanzee called Frodo. It's quite a famous one. Jane Goodall worked with him and so on. Frodo was killed 2 human beings. And, you know, the first time it happened, it's sort of going, I can tell people the details afterwards unless anyone's, well, I know the details of one particular incident. And you're going, okay, if that was like, say, a deer in Richmond Park in London in a killed a person, it would be dead. But they let Frodo get away with it, so to speak.
Is this a wild chimp?
It's a wild chimpanzee that's habituated, because it was one of the groups that Jane Goodall and so on, and various researchers have sat with notebooks, you know, in the background watching what the chimps do. So the chimps are used to people being close by and not being a threat. But the chimps are also still chimps, and when someone turned up with a baby, you know, kind of big goose thing, adult humans are not to be messed with. Babies are monkey-sized and delicious. This chimp did it twice. And you're going, yeah, there's how we feel about them, but how they feel about us is not necessarily the same. You know, the chimp isn't going to mess with another human because it's smart enough to know that's a bad idea, and probably understands what guns are and things. But
One of the points I think people often, because there is a proposal to give a limited form of personhood to the great apes, and people often say, they will say, well, if it's murder, we kill a chimpanzee, then if a chimpanzee kills a human being, is that murder? And I think the thing is, they've missed a vital point, which is, even within human beings, the right to life is not intrinsically linked to the responsibilities that uphold life. And by that, what I mean is, if I kill a 5-year-old child, I get done for murder. If a 5-year-old child pushes me off a cliff, I think it's funny, they're below the age of criminal responsibility.
Yeah.
They don't get done for murder. But the fact that a child would not be prosecuted for murder if they kill someone does not mean it's okay to kill them. So the obvious answer would be, don't go keep people away from the gorillas and the chimpanzees because they're wild animals, but we should know better and not kill them. I mean, that's, the second time sounds like there's a massive failure there of the people who were involved in keeping human beings away from these. Once is an unfortunate thing,
yeah,
twice is
yeah. I only know the details of one incident, so I don't know what the difference is between the two. I don't know the details of the second incident, so they might have gone out of the way to make sure that what happened the first time never happened again, but they hadn't thought of something else, you know.
One thing I was thinking about here as well is the way that humans have put themselves in danger and also in conflict with animals by encroaching on their space with essentially cutting down loads and loads of trees, things like that. You've got species that just end up essentially corralled into a far smaller space. So where are they going to go? The habitats are being destroyed, and essentially there's going to be that conflict purely because if humans are encroaching, they're essentially on their lawn, so to speak, and they need to take responsibility for what happens in that respect. I have quite strong feelings, so I'm going to take them myself.
Just one quick word. Right, okay, there's a word I don't know how to pronounce. The pygmy chimpanzee. Does anyone know if is it bonobo or bonobo?
Bonobo.
This is bonobo. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Because one of these things is you can have, well, like actually in Planet of the Apes, where you have the the chimpanzees and the gorillas regarded as more violent, like the aggressive ones. And now in human species, in Homo sapiens, if we were to suggest that one group was inherently more violent, that would be epically racist.
Yeah.
But if you say have a society where you had chimpanzees become intelligent, bonobos become intelligent, and chimpanzees are more aggressive than bonobos. If say bonobo didn't want a chimpanzee nurse, or sorry, chimpanzee-like nanny for their baby, and if chimpanzees were simply more, I mean, chimps, I've got the quote here, chimp society is prone to violence, and bonobos relatively peaceful.
Yeah.
Would that be prejudice, or would that be, I looked up the theory, I don't know what it was, supposedly it's, bonobos live south of the Zaire River, and chimps live north of the river. And there were gorillas north of the river, but not south of the river, apparently. So the theory is that chimps, they diverged like 2 million years ago. And the theory is that chimps had to be more aggressive because they're in competition with the bigger, tougher gorillas. Whereas the bonobos could form this kind of free love society, this matriarchal free love society, because they didn't have the nasty gorillas stealing all their food.
I'm not sure, just they're not entirely an overlapping in food. Gorillas are entirely vegetarian. They might occasionally eat an insect, which chimps actively hunt. I'm not sure the bonobos will eat meat, but I don't think they do the organised hunts that chimps do. But it's just, there's plenty of places where species have diverged.
Yes.
And it's just that's what happens in nature. It might have been literally that they got cut off between, the river is there.
Yes.
It's been there for a million years, and therefore they have become different.
Yes.
Yeah. But I mean, there are no bonobos in any of the Planet of the Apes movies, because they would all be 18 rated. Except
Shag anything.
That'd be quite.
Chimps sort settle disputes, and if me and you had been squabbling, we would be grooming each other's fur to make friends again. Bonobos shag. Every combination of participants and positions that humans invented, the bonobos got there first.
Yes. But it's an interesting challenge to like Puritan orthodoxy that the ones that are free love shag anything people, last piece of one. The chimps been observed fighting wars, the Goom Chimp War, which was caused by I read about the Goom. Sorry, slight tangent. I read about the Goom Chimp War it was a feminist paper that got linked.
Yeah.
And this paper was fascinating. It basically said that an awful lot of conflict is caused by men in competition for women. And it basically said that monogamy evolved really, they're very patriarchal, but monogamy evolved as a kind of strategic arms limitation treaty amongst men. That men recognise there was so much violence between men competing for women. And in polygamy, it's incredibly vicious, because one man gets all the women and then the other men have none. And so monogamy was like, well, let's all agree, we'll all end up with women, one woman each.
Yeah.
We'll compete for the best woman, or what we perceive to be the best woman. And so this paper was basically saying, and it's looking at, the Nigel Boko Haram, the one who kidnapped girls and stuff.
Oh God,
Yes.
Yes.
And it was looking at some of the really dodgy stuff that ISIS did, and what motivated people there. And then the Goon Chimp War was apparently, it was the male chimps fighting, two tribes of chimps fighting under the women, basically.
Oh,
and in the end, the ones that won were so weak, and that another chimp tribe came in and then took them over.
It's even more complicated with the chimps because, you know, parties and males will go out to patrol the borders of their territory, kind of thing. But if they meet a female from the opposing group, they'll kill her too. They're just murderously going, no, get off me land, kind of thing. So it's not, oh, it's a strange woman, let us throw her back home and so on.
So when we say men are the problem and all men are bastards,
Yeah,
it's not quite true, but you have to get to the bonobos before it ceases to become true.
Well, it's not
Basically.
human polygyny is nothing like animal polygyny. It's sort of, I can rant at length about this. So, you know, a bloke having half a dozen wives, in the animal kingdom, no old men would have wives.
Yes.
Only, no adolescents would have wives because they're not experienced enough to win the fights.
Yeah.
Or kill them collectively. And no old people would have multiple wives because the wives would dump them for a younger, fitter model at some point in the proceedings.
Yes.
So it's you know, say Mormons, traditional Mormons, back in the old days, having multiple wives. That's because their society decided it was going to be that way,
Yes.
and it was being policed by laws that are written
So
down.
if they were being natural, then some young bloke would come along, murder the old man, and take his wives. If they really want to be natural.
Or the wives would go, Fred's getting on a bit.
Yeah.
Oh, look at that hunk down the road. Bye! And Johnny's very dumb. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
It reminds me of a sketch, which is how I steal your girlfriend. But also I was thinking about this, and essentially you could almost say this is like the culture they have. So you've got the should we say very interesting taboo stocky monkeys. I can't remember. Bonobos.
They used to be called pygmy chimps.
Yeah,
I have bonobos.
Oh, they're
Very
cool.
phonetically.
Yeah,
so
and it's also not just all tab A and slot B. I mean, it's tab A and tab A and
slot C.
Oh, that's fun.
Yes,
Fantastic.
but the first time an anthropologist, primatologist discovered how bonobos resolve conflict is they were sitting in a clearing in the jungle, and there was one group of bonobos getting about their business and eating and so on, and she's making notes. And a second group turns up, and she said, she I can't remember her name, she just froze and sat there very, very still, because if those were common chimps, what would go out to happen is a violence would erupt everywhere.
There would be 50 chimp cuffs.
Yes, there would have been fights all over the place, and she might have got, you know, whacked or you know. But what actually happened was the two groups stopped, and they stared at each other, and they stared at each other. The two matriarchs came a bit closer, they stared at each other, and they stared at each other, and then they went right up to each other, and they vigorously rubbed genitals for a minute or two. Basically, they had lesbian sex. And then they both turned their backs on each other and sat down and began to eat. And the two groups then got on with their own business, ignoring the other group entirely, apart from the really young ones who all played together. And you're going, yeah, and she went, whoa, I'm going to get a paper about this. You know.
Actually, can I jump in with something else? So it also, having heard what you've both been saying, it also sounds like it might very much be an environment thing that's been honed in year upon year upon year, where the natural environment is dangerous, so therefore there needs to be that almost mirror universe, fisticuffs with everything, But if you've got a quieter environment, then essentially there's that opportunity to be a bit more peace and love and free-loving.
I don't think it's a nice environment against a nasty environment. It's there's lots of different ways to solve a problem. So like if you want to get to the top of a tree, you could climb it like a squirrel, or you could fly up like a bird, or you could drift there on the breeze like one of the ballooning spiders and things. So it's that kind of thing that the chimps have gone for. Life is tough. We must defend this patch of land to their death. And bonobos have gone, yeah, fighting takes an awful lot of effort, and you get injured, and therefore you might die of an infection or something. Let's just all be chilled,
It's just so interesting to
Yeah.
hear those differences. And again, not all animals, it just
Yeah.
goes to show, not all animals are the same.
Yeah.
They've got their different personalities, they've got their different cultures, and they've got their different mindsets.
See, I'm now imagining through. I imagine like a Clockwork Orange style experiment where you take a white woman American fundamentalists and strap them in with their eyes held open, and you just show them hour after hour of uncensored bonobo footage. That's possibly me. We probably should. We probably should go to the second part.
Many points we should.
Yeah. No, I say to be fair, the panel did have other things that people might love ChatGPT. They might. I mean, I don't like AI, but. In a sense, leave aside ChatGPT and talk about genuine AI, which has not yet come along, but I'm sure at some point will.
Yeah, so we get Skynet or HAL or
so moving forward to things like replicants, robots, artificial intelligence, so on. Again, we haven't had to have a threshold of what counts as a person, because it's a member of the species Homo sapiens, and it doesn't matter. I mean, you can have someone. You can have someone who is profoundly learning disabled, who is still according to full human rights, as they should be, as they absolutely should be. But we haven't actually had to explain why. We haven't had to justify it, because they're a human being. But it's almost a circular definition, sort of. Whereas you can have a chimpanzee who's more intelligent than that, but because they're not a member of the species Homo sapiens, they don't get the rights. But if we haven't had to examine this question because we've only had one intelligent species, basically, with the gap. But if we now we're going to introduce the question ourselves by creating artificial life forms that are intelligent enough to ask the question, and then so we do have to come up with a threshold for what counts as a person. It's not just intelligence, because again, somebody who's profoundly learning disabled but has the capacity to feel joy and love life and live a life and have a life, they deserve those rights. And again, I would say they do, but also I'd say pigs deserve rights as well, because pigs can love life and enjoy life and so on. But again, if you've got someone which is maybe incredibly intelligent, more intelligent than us maybe, but we don't know if there's anything there in terms of, I can look at a dog's eyes and think, you have emotions. You can be depressed, you can be happy, you can be joyful, you can be sad, you can experience depression, misery, whatever. If I've got a computer piece of software which may be brilliant at answering questions, and is not merely regurgitating some bullshit like an LLM, but genuinely is making insightful points or whatever, but does it feel joy? Does it feel emotions? At what point do we decide what makes a person a person?
Why does it need to have emotions to be a person? Because it could be a completely logical Mr. Spock-like computer, and still be a person because it's got all these other.
I suppose
it doesn't feel joy, but it does understand that you shouldn't drive above 70 miles. It weighs all the rules and
it would be because both
knows how to participate in society.
I suppose it's more about a sense of identity, a sense of self. If he didn't care, if he got turned off, if you said, "Are you bothered me turning you off?" Like, why can't I be bothered? You just reboot me from my original software and start me again. And if it had if it didn't care if it was alive, do you see what I mean? It's more, so it's more than just emotions. Well, I don't know what the answer is here. This is genuinely.
Yeah, I actually find it really interesting.
There is one question. Artificial intelligence is so
Well, that's the. Where is it?
that is that I've heard in some fictions.
Yes.
Is that where
that's what I'm just trying to say, is consciousness. Now, chimps, the test, I believe, of self-awareness for chimps, which chimps pass and other animals don't, is while they're asleep, you put a dot of paint on their forehead. And then when you show them a mirror, but when they see themselves in the mirror, they're like, trying to
Gorillas
get
pass it as well.
yeah, sorry?
Gorillas.
Right, yeah. So,
Elephants pass it, and yeah, there's a lot, and some parrots pass it, and there's a whole variety of
Dolphins.
yeah.
parrots,
Yeah.
They know when they
I'm
look
not
at the mirror,
sure
they're
of-
seeing themselves.
I'm not sure of careful what to do, but it's very difficult to stick something to an octopus. So, and it would probably feel it and remove it with the tentacle long before it got to the mirror.
I was going to say actually with AI and the self-aware points, I think, so my company's been trying to make me use Microsoft Copilot, which I don't like it, and actually I would be completely upfront and say, when I got told you need to use this at work, I said, do you want silence? Because that's how you bloody get silence. Think about Skynet. But there again, the way it talks, it creeps me out a bit, because how the way it functions and how it comes across, it's being programmed with a very user-friendly language, so it almost seems like it's self-aware, because it will say, I'm thinking about this. Would you like to see a presentation? I have done a presentation, and what clearly has happened is you've had a lot of people look at the language. So I work in communications, and we think a lot about how we're going to communicate certain things, what sort of language we use. And my natural language is very clear and straightforward, and they're teaching you how to use less 1800s style sort of writing. But with that, we're sorry to hear about this, and I thought we are sorry. But again, with Copilot, it just seems like they're trying to make it a bit too human. And on top of that as well, it's the way that we get told it will learn how you work things, what questions you ask. It'll become more intuitive. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want that. And there's prompts of get Copilot to write for you. I'm like, I don't want it to write for me. I want to use my own words. When it does, I'm like, don't take my voice away. But it just doesn't seem. There are certain things computers can do because they've got the programming. They can be programmed with responses. But essentially, with the human brain, that's where you get the instincts, the thoughts. You get that self-awareness. You also get how to react. So if something's hot, it might be, oh, run from it. But there again, actually, I need to turn this off, but it's not automatically visible. And then there's the problem-solving process. So essentially, while something might seem technology-wise self-aware, there's also going to be a hell of a lot of programming and linguistics that have been inserted into it.
in a sense, the hallucinations that prove that. So the thing is, generative AI, it has no concept of reality. It has no concept of anything. It has no concept of there being a concept. It's very, 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 very sophisticated, powerful text prediction. What's the most likely string of words? So it's a bit like when you put a few points in a graph, you extrapolate a mathematical function between those points, and the function will continue on forever. But if you go way beyond where the data points were, which is bullshit, nothing. And so it will come up with the most likely form of words. But if you pick on an area where data isn't really there, it will just extrapolate like that line on the graph. And and the words are the most likely words, but they're bullshit. But you can't say don't bullshit because it doesn't know it
has no context
of what's real.
Yeah.
It doesn't understand even the concept of what's real. It just is picking the most likely words to appear.
Or it can't even connect. My friend Keith is an Arthurian buff. So he was on the internet doing something about researching something about King Arthur. You know when you get you get your little summary, and then underneath it is questions other people have asked about King Arthur or whatever. Nobody has ever asked these questions. That's generative AI making them up. But anyway, one of them was, did King Arthur marry his daughter And Keith went, what the fuck? Yeah, it was like, Shaggy's sister, yeah, I've never, and Keith, because he's an Arthurian buff, couldn't resist clicking and going down the rabbit hole to find out what it was. What it was, there was a paragraph in some, 12th century Arthurian thing translated from the French kind of thing, which went, King Arthur went to go and see King Bloggs. Hello, said King Bloggs. Have I introduced you to my daughter? Oh, nice to meet you, said King Arthur. And then after a month, King Arthur married his daughter, meaning he had married King Bloggs. But all it had seen was King Arthur married his daughter.
Yes.
And it had extracted that and made up a spurious question that Arthurian scholars might be interested in. And you're going, yeah.
So yeah, no human rights there. I think we can agree.
Yes,
Yes.
We're not pleased.
Yes.
Do we have, actually, we are coming up to, let's see what's going. Do we have any questions?
We also started a bit late.
That's true,
Yeah, so this intermediate species, I was interested, will our attitude be based on how it related to us? Yeah, this species that's somewhere between chimpanzee and humans.
Yes.
Or Homo sapiens.
I think we will probably just make a very intuitive kind of.
Because
yes.
I can just imagine in our history we were fighting over the same fields because we needed the same.
I think it would be probably a lot of well, so there is the uncanny valley theory, isn't it? Uncanny valley is that things, this theory that things look like robots, sort of things, almost human but not quite. We feel repulsiveness, and the theory is that's from when one human species will meet another human species. And they'd be like different. But then again, we don't chat. So, but no, I think chimps can't talk. Literally can't talk. They just have to do the voice box or something.
Yeah.
Which is why they try to teach them either sign language or pointing at symbols. I think if chimps' voice box could make sounds and they taught them to talk at the same level they talk sign language, I think that would have been way more groundbreaking. Because I don't know what a deaf person would think, assuming they speak the same sign language. They might have quite an emotional reaction to seeing a chimp sign, but if you don't speak sign language, you don't. So I think an awful lot of it would come about if they did have voice boxes that produce sounds. And again, there's a whole load of stuff about when and how language evolved, and that's incredibly controversial. But if we could teach them to speak at the level, like say a 2-year-old child, where the child doesn't yet understand pronouns, but can say, want banana, I want banana, hungry, whatever. That would probably, we'd say yes. They're people.
I think there's also
because it would seem too much about slavery to do otherwise.
Yeah, you can teach dogs and cats to do the want banana stuff. There's
Mary Robin and Cat.
Helen talked about it. Yeah, you get these things that are buttons that the animal can thump with its paw, and it's got a recorded thing in it, so it'll say walkies or food or whatever. And she said one of her cats was thick as shit and never learned how to use this thing, but the other one was inventing grammar because there was a button for soon, and there was a button for something else, and it would press both of them, meaning now. It was in the middle, before and soon, and before soon is now, so it would go food before soon.
They do say parrots can actually understand more than they thought. My 86-year-old mother, if you were told her in 1939, when she was young, one day you'll have this device upon which you can see all the information in the world, and you will use it to watch videos of a very sweary Australian cockatoo. But the cockatoo where he gets really upset because he hates the next door's cat. He's looking out the window, he's going, bastard cat, getting really, really upset. His mum's trying to calm him down and stuff.
Oh, but parrots are really Scotland. There's some heartbreaking footage that the Naturalist Unit had, because they went and filmed this parrot called Alex, which is a famous one that they've taught it to say lots of words and do things like, so it's intelligence test stuff. So they tell it to put it's got Kitty's magnetic letters and things you've got to go, and put the red 4 in the box so it can understand, it can see several number 4s, but it knows you want the red one. Or, you know, so it's levels of concept. So they were filming the parrot do these things, you know, put the green circle in the, you know, and prove that it understood there was 2 layers to the thing. So Ingrid, that I know, was one of the naturalist unit producers. They were filming this, and it takes quite a long time to get all the shots you want. So the parrot's going, want to go back, want to go back. So the parrot wanted to stop this and go back to its, you know, aviary or so.
Yeah.
And the researcher was going, no, we'll just do a few more things, you know, because we have the television video.
Yeah.
So the parrot was expressing, you know, it didn't want to do this anymore.
Yes.
It was tired, and it was, you know, no, we'll do some more. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
See, if it was a child, there'd be rules about that sort of thing.
yeah, and when you saw some of the shots of the parrot, it had been pulling its own feathers. It was bald in patches, because it was obviously a very, very stressed bird.
Yeah.
Because it was getting pushed too much to, you know, so this was the hot-housed kid getting pushed to become a ballet dancer, and they didn't want to be kind of, and you're going, yeah, that bird's smarter than the owner, and it definitely has a lot more empathy. The other thing is, the more testing they've done, pretty much every primate species they've tested has a sense of, it's not fair! Well, you know, if you teach the monkeys to do some trick, or a still puzzle thing, and you give one a lovely juicy strawberry, and you give the other one a bit of carrot, the one that gets the carrot will shove it back at the scientist.
I think that's fair enough.
Shove it back and throw it at the scientist. Yeah,
That's fair enough.
yeah.
Good on them. Yeah.
But there's, yes, there's, I think pigs have got the it's not fair thing as well. So that's definitely aspects of personhood.
Yes.
There's motivation there, and also
Yeah.
thresholds when things are they just don't flipping want to anymore.
Yeah.
You know what? Good on them. Quite
Yeah,
right.
but it's also the monkey is going, right, okay, there are rules to this puzzle solving
There's a-
thing, and you're breaking them.
There's intrinsic moral code where they've
Yeah.
evolved as a group. They can exist in a group,
Yeah.
broadly peacefully within that group, maybe, because they have rules as to
Yeah.
what's right and what's fair. So any other questions?
Any more questions?
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Well, there's another concept I'm thinking is that also, you know, you think that animals live from day to day and think too much ahead or behind, but the concept of the passing of time and the counting of time goes quite a long way down the animal kingdom. As anyone would know who was ever trying to get a horse to do anything on it, what is usually its day off.
Yeah.
Hang on, I'm not doing this today. I normally get Sundays off.
Could say at this point, this way, it's been my mum's father, his family, they owned a haulage company.
Yeah.
And when he was a boy, their wagons had a return to base capability.
Yeah.
So he could do a delivery, he's like 12 or something, go to the place where he's delivering, and he could fall asleep on the way home, and the wagon would get home.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because
And this is
it's
a case
horse
of
drawn. Yeah,
counting
because it's
the
horse
days
drawn.
and knowing
Yeah.
that every seventh day you've
Yeah.
got to go out.
Well, there's all the other classic ones. If you ever owned a dog, if they're just being walked at like 5 p.m, clocks go back or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
4 p.m, dog's like, right, walk time. You have choice. No, you don't understand. It's a single daylight saving time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's when the farmers have to advance the milking time by like something 2 minutes a day
Yeah.
to catch up with the clocks change.
Actually, this is not a discussion about daylight saving time. I know it's a very
Yeah.
strong,
Yeah.
controversial topic which deserves a panel of its own.
Yeah.
Well, if you're a dog, you know when you want walkies, and hey, so stuff
Yeah,
it. Want
so,
walkies.
with all the levels of intelligence and stuff, well, there is the obvious possibility that, we meet aliens that are way more smarter than we are, and they decide we don't have full personhood.
Well, we couldn't really complain.
Yeah.
Really, I think it'd be a bit hypocritical to say, no, that's not fair. I think, yeah, you could argue we should get our house, I mean, speaking as a vegan here, we should get our house in order before the aliens turn up, so we can kind of,
Yeah, sorry, you do.
No, I'm not saying before they turn up and voice us by our own kind of way.
In which case, I would recommend Calvin Travis's books, the West Far series. The first one is City of Pearl. those aliens do turn up and we haven't got our house in order.
Yes.
So in the first one set on an alien planet with meeting some species of aliens, one species which have absolutely ecologically wrecked their planet, but absolutely not that far behind kind of thing. And over the series, you know, the big scary aliens that turn up and go, what the hell have you done to your biosphere? Right, we're fixing this now. You're all going to live underground because cities are too polluted, and you're going to stop eating meat, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do. They turn up.
I think
They're sort of.
what we could perhaps hope is they wouldn't eat us. They wouldn't treat us like cows.
Yeah.
They treat us like children. They would maybe come in, just wave their magic sort of their technological magic wands, nuclear weapons disappear. It's like, okay, from now on, we're ordering your power systems, we're going to sort you out. And we might possibly look at some sort of reconstruction of democracy over the next century, possibly, if we can civilise you to
That actually sounds further enough. With what you were saying about aliens and eating and stuff like that, it made me think of Twilight's episode called How to Serve Man. And essentially the aliens think, or not the aliens, so the humans think, how to serve man, they're going to be subservient, they're going to look after us. No. The tone, yes, it's probably good. The tone is actually how to serve man on I just think it's just such an interesting concept, because I mean, how would we know what they're thinking? I did a laugh actually where I was where we were a group of people communicating with alien life forms, and actually it was fascinating because we were going through, with a scenario, we're going through linguistics. How do they see time? How would they communicate? What sort of language do they use? So with this scenario, they found singing. Singing was easier to deal with than perhaps speech, and then it was doing concepts of us, and then fear, things like that. But the whole thought sphere of a completely different way of life, of existence, it's just such an interesting concept. It's possibly one of the most wrecking laughs I've ever done, but it was so worth it, and we had a question at the back.
Continuing from that, if you think about it, how much cultural references we have in our speech. So how do we think we actually can communicate with aliens who have no knowledge of who we are, our social interactions, our culture, and we don't know theirs? So it will be interesting, and I think, was it called Second with Contact, which is sort of making mathematics the sort of basis of communication.
Yeah.
And that goes into music as well. If you think about, so the music, the tones, and and some of the sort of combination of notes and things, we might actually be able to find a common denominator
There's definitely a
where
short
we can start
yeah.
communicating on the same level.
There's definitely a short story where they're struggling to communicate with aliens, they can't remember it, and they realise their Rosetta Stone is the periodic table.
Yeah.
But I've read that and think, oh, this is good. But if what you're using is prime numbers and periodic table and octaves in music, you're having a really weird conversation.
Yes.
You're not saying, do you like to come round for dinner and are you vegan? You can't really say that
Well, not as part saying.
Yeah.
When do you think we should, look, we have all the issues of communication between Americans and British. And I saw, you get the famous, like, things what the British say, what they mean. And supposedly the British battalion that got overrun in the Korean War. And I'm just not sure how true this is, but the story is that the American general in charge was phoned by his subordinates, finds out who needed support. And he asked the British colonel, lieutenant colonel in charge of the battalion, how it was going. And the answer was, it could get a bit sticky. Which he interpreted as meaning, it's difficult, but it is not bad. Well, what actually meant is we're about to get overrun. And so no reserves were sent, and they got overrun. The entire battalion was either killed or captured, pretty much, like destroyed. And there's a theory, I saw an interesting YouTube video by this, and they probably mangled, but they talk about there's low context communication cultures and high context communication cultures. And a high context communication culture means you communicate, when you say things, a lot of it relies on a reference to some shared piece of knowledge. So if you reference if two Star Trek people are talking, and they say, well, it's like, and they'll reference like, you know, whatever Dharma or whatever, they'll reference like a Star Trek episode. Yes. And we know what they're talking about. Or you might, someone say, it's a difference between saying you've got a young subordinate who's being briefed, and you're a bit worried about it, and someone says, what are you worried about? It's the difference between saying, I'm a bit worried, he's young, he's enthusiastic. We've given him a parameter in which he ought to operate, because we know what the general safety parameters are, and he doesn't. But I'm a bit worried you might get a bit carried away, go outside those safety parameters, and it might turn into disaster. Or I could say, I think it might be a bit of an Icarus situation. Now the latter is much more efficient, but only works if the other person knows the story of Icarus. So high context communication is more efficient because you can say a lot more in fewer words, because it's like you've got a shared code book of phrases. But it's more fragile because it relies on people having the same cultural contexts. Low context communication is more efficient, sorry, it's less efficient because you have to say the whole message has to be self-contained, but it's more robust. So the theory is that Britain has been a relatively insular island for most of its sort of existence on. So we've got a more high context communication system. Americans took people from all over, you know, Russia, Poland, Germany, France, Italy, whatever. And they all learned English. They didn't have those shared cultural touch points. So they had to evolve a more low context communication where the message had to be self-contained. So from their perspective, they just say what they mean, whereas we talk in these bloody cryptic things. Because so when you say it's a bit sticky, you're actually saying two things. You're saying that it could be really bad, but you're also saying, I'm not panicking. That's the point. You're letting your boss know that it's bad, but you're not panicking. But that's the cultural context that the American guy didn't get.
It's also shorthand, but it's a bit of a sticky wicket.
Well, that as well, yes.
See, I'm thinking with this style, so I'm neurodiverse. And I find where people use, where they don't say directly what they mean, I like being very, very clear. There are times I do not understand certain things, or I'll have to really, really think about it. So the reason why I like to speak or write in a very clear context, and no fussing around, no fluffing about, is because that way I can understand it and I can read it. And the best learning experiences I've had have been where I have improved connections and I have had autistic kids essentially teach me how to be clearer with how I speak. And I love the things that have been said about the aliens and references and things like that. That's precisely what we did on LAR. And because I had to relearn some of my speech and language and stuff after the stroke, sometimes it's even more of a challenge. But it's knowing how to alter that, it's knowing what the references are. And there are certain things we expect to know or understand something's joke. And I'll be like, I don't get it. Can you please just say what you mean? Just not everything. If you were saying, oh, that's a beautiful shade of eggshell, like if you mean it's blue, just say blue.
I also read a psychology, human psychology, evolutionary psychology textbook, and there was a chapter in that where they're going, yeah, obviously languages evolve over time. The way genes mutate over time and so on, but it happens far too fast for it to be a random chance and so on. And they were, various people have analysed this, and then basically people invent slang and in-group languages at a huge rate, and what they are trying to do in evolutionary terms is detect freeloaders who are trying to be part of the group but not pay their dues. Kind of thing, and then it also gets wrapped up in kind of, you know, class systems, and you're not the, oh no, we have supper, we don't have, you know, whatever. And then, you know, the being down with the kids, they, you know, so each generation, each subgroup within, you know, the kids that like heavy metal music will have different words that they use and so on. So you get this whole, the language is changing really fast. So again, America and Britain, you know, have gone off to be different
It's
countries.
amazing we can understand each other at all.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
If we don't.
Any comment?
Yes. Think about non-native English speakers. How hard it would be for them to actually get all the nuances. So I personally find English is a very simple, easy language to learn in the beginning, but it's very hard to master then all the intricacies that you're finding. So I was living for quite a while in London, and there is very multicultural and people from the whole world basically. And I was in a very multinational environment, and we actually communicated slightly differently with each other than when I'm down here. And then you have the Jenna, you have the West Country accents, you have things like directly and other sort of very specific words and pronunciations here. And it was, yeah, it was, language is really fascinating in this respect, because it sort of changes, and you also see that yourself, or with yourself. I think I was speaking differently in London than I was than when I'm down here, and I'm communicating differently.
Well, I moved to Bristol and confused many English people because the Scottish way of saying things. So if I wish to know whether you would give me your cat, it's cat food. The Scottish way is cat need fed. Whereas the English way is, does the cat need to be fed? But yeah, there's just lots of sort of things they're going, you haven't put any verbs in that sentence. You know?
You said that, I mean, I moved from Hampshire to Lancashire, and I had to learn a pretty new speech pattern.
Yeah.
And modology, and just the way you greet people. The other day, hello.
Hey lad, you need a whippet and a pint of bitter with that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you live just down the road from us.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm Lancashire born and bred, yeah.
Yeah.
I lived in New Zealand for a year, and I found that, I mean, the way of life there starts off with I learned how to relax, but also, yeah, I realised, I think, about a month after I'd moved there, it was a massive culture shock, because it's like where everything really is different. And when I came back, my dad had this broad, because I pick up accents like covered in like bloody Velcro. My dad noticed, he heard the Kiwi accent, and then it was also the way I was and the phrases I was using. I love it. Any opportunity to learn different languages, different words, different ways of communicating. I absolutely love it. I love those differences. They are so fascinating. And again, this is why I love my diversity and inclusion, because it's seeing all that broad, rich tapestry of how there are differences, and then wanting to know all about it, because it's an adventure, it's great.
I had a New Zealand owl's really smart story. My friend Smitty and me emigrated to New Zealand. So been there a little while, and then pandemic happened. And Smitty said where they were, you could go down to harbour, there's loads of yachts and fishing boats and all the rest of it. And then there's lots of whale watching tours. People would go out to watch humpback whales. And the pandemic happened, and like that all shuts down. So there might be the odd fishing boat going out because they still need fish. But all the touristy yachts, nope, not happening. All the whale watching, not happening. The humpbacks came into the harbour looking for the people. Yeah, because she says, you know, there were humpbacks coming in, and they'd never come into the harbour before. They were swimming in and kind of sticking their heads out and going, hello humans, are you still there? Kind of, you know. obviously,
Where have they gone?
where have they
Yeah.
gone? We're used to seeing.
Not like they were being
Yeah.
fed or anything, it was just curiosity.
Why does Star Trek the Return Home spring to mind?
Yeah.
Well, they've all buggered off. Where are they?
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
should maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
Any final questions or? Right.
Quick one, since I missed most of it, running around trying to get the jobs done. This one, you might have covered it, but in Star Trek, the Journey Home, basically the aliens have already been here a long time until their relatives turned up, namely the whales, the probe. So the question is, that is not vocal, that's a combination of vocal, sound, light, God knows what. And of course, everybody expects when the aliens turn up to speak English.
Yes.
Well, so thanks for all the fish,
Yeah.
Everything I've ever seen, aliens always speak perfect English.
Well,
They speak American.
Well, sure,
Yeah,
Unless they're bad guys.
Or French or German, depending on
yeah, if you
when
watch,
they
if you
Dutch.
Or Doctor Who actors.
Oh, they speak Korean, if you watch.
Oh, that's true, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, when the aliens roll up, this guy said, "We're all talking. What is this gibberish we're
No,
hearing?"
sorry, this is with a shock for us, because let's say they do turn up, and let's say they've listened to our communications, they fed it into their sort of super AIs, and they've taught themselves, they recognise English as a world language, they taught themselves English. Flying saucers going to land, maybe outside the US, of course, whatever, the lead of the aliens is going to get out, and he's going to speak in a bloody American accent, isn't he?
Yeah.
Lots of planets have an
Yorkshire accent. Probably Yorkshire accent, the Scottish accent.
No, it's about...
All right, I love that there was a line, did you ever see the Alien Nation TV series? So there was the
Bits of it,
Alien
I know,
Nation
I saw
movie.
bits of it, yes.
Yeah, so that, there's an alien spaceship has crash landed and they're now
Yes.
being integrated into, so they're doing lots of stories about racism and migration and things like this. But there's two human there's a human cop in it, and his ex-partner is a black guy. And he's got this line in it, he said, yeah, it was great. There was, this day the spaceship crash lands and the doors open and all these aliens come out and God damn it, they're all white.
I read a short story not that long ago, and the gist of the short story was that Earth was unknowingly ruled by aliens. So Earth was left alone.
Yeah.
And then one government, alien government, was exchanged with another one. And then the humans got notified. And then they were asking sort of like, yeah, what can we do? And then they said, well, you have all these different color shades. Do you have any green or blue? That would be very beneficial for the new government. And they said, green and blue, we have a lot of shades, but not green and blue.
Yeah, I think they did an updated Twilight Zone episode of they turned that into a little mini episode.
Yeah, it was a short story, and I can't remember.
Yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Oh, could you send some of your blue people? Oh, we don't know. Oh dear.
Yeah.
How about some of your green people? Yeah.
So much for racism.
Yeah.
We're just coming up to 20 past. Shall we wrap up now?
Yes, I probably should. Maybe
Is it
any
living
final
place?
comments or?
Can I please say that I've absolutely loved being on this panel. It has been so interesting. I mean, certainly the fact I do work in communications, even though my manager's a bit of an idiot, but never mind him. Get there, everywhere is a manager. It's just been absolutely fascinating. It has been so interesting covering all the subject matters, especially is it Bonobo? Bonobo. Yeah, I need to watch some
You
videos.
hit YouTube and...
Yeah.
Sorry, the night of the you need to hit YouTube, it's Bonobo porn. I don't mean that, but yes.
It's okay, yeah, if you're into monkey porn, it's fine. It's been a really, really good panel. I'm so glad that I had the lovely surprise of being on it. And it's been fantastic being on the panel with you. And thank you everybody for listening. Thank you for your inputs.
Yeah. Thank you, audience, for actually staying and listening to us rather than running to the bar. Yeah, it's been fun. Thanks very much for suggesting it. It's been fascinating.
Yes, thank you.